Glenfiddich Distillery is a Speyside single malt Scotch whisky distillery, located in the Scottish burgh of Dufftown in Moray, Scotland. It is owned by William Grant and Sons. The name Glenfiddich derives from the Scottish Gaelic Glenfeddich, meaning Valley of the Deer, which is reflected in Glenfiddich's stag logo. The Glenfiddich Distillery was founded in 1886 by William Grant in Dufftown, Scotland, in the glen of the River Fiddich. The Glenfiddich single malt whisky first ran from the stills on Christmas Day 1887. In the 1920s, with Prohibition in force in the U.S., Glenfiddich was one of a very small number of distilleries to increase production. This put them in a strong position to meet the sudden rise in demand for fine-aged whiskies that came with the repeal of Prohibition. In the 1950s, the Grant family built up an on-site infrastructure that included coppersmiths to maintain the copper stills, and a dedicated cooperage that is now one of the very few remaining in distilleries. In 1956, the Grant's brand launched the now iconic triangular bottle, designed by Hans Schläger. Following difficult times in the 1960s and 1970s, many small, independent distillers were bought up or went out of business. In order to survive, W. Grant & Sons expanded their production of the drink and introduced advertising campaigns and a visitors center. In this period, they also decided to begin marketing single malt as a premium brand in its own right, effectively creating the modern single malt whiskey category with the 1963 introduction of Glenfiddich single malt to the United States and other foreign markets. Later, W. Grant & Sons was one of the first distilleries to package its bottles in tubes and gift tins, as well as recognizing the importance of the duty-free market for spirits. This marketing strategy was successful, and Glenfiddich has since become the world's best-selling single malt. It is sold in 180 countries and accounts for about 35% of single malt sales. Glenfiddich is currently managed by the fifth generation of William Grant's descendants. In September 2014, William Grant & Sons agreed to acquire Drambuie for an undisclosed price rumored to be in the region of $100 million. In 2015, Glenfiddich commissioned ad agency Gravity Thinking to create a high-tech YouTube campaign titled The Finishing Touch to promote the relaunch of their 21-Yo single malt, aged in Caribbean Reserva rum casks. The video showed a Levitron isolating a single drop of whiskey in a mid-air suspended animation and featured Puerto Rican singer Calma Carmona performing the Franz Ferdinand song Love Illumination with the orchestra of the Scottish Opera, arranged and conducted by Derek Williams. By the end of the campaign, the video had garnered more than 1.7 million YouTube hits. Since 2002, Glenfiddich has had an artists-in-residence program with a total budget of $130,000, allowing artists to stay and work in the distillery each year. In 2019, there were 8 artists in residence, and in 2021, there were 6 artists in residence. In 2021, the distillery began converting distillery trucks to run on biogas made from the distillery waste products. The Glenfiddich Distillery produces Glenfiddich whiskey in Dufftown, Moray. Glenfiddich is a single malt Scotch whiskey. This means the whiskey was distilled at a single distillery using a pot still distillation process and must be made from a mash of malted barley. On site, there are 43 distinctively shaped swan neck copper pot stills. These stills are smaller than those now in use at most other major distilleries. All stills are handmade, and Glenfiddich employs a team of craftsmen and coppersmiths to maintain them. These stills have a capacity of around 21,000 liters of spirit. The water source for Glenfiddich whiskey is the Robbie Dew springs nearby to the distillery. Glenfiddich is matured in many different casks, such as rum casks from the Caribbean, bourbon whiskey barrels from America, and sherry butts from Jerez de la Frontera in Spain. Once the spirit has matured, the casks are emptied and the whiskey is cut with pure Robbie Dew spring water. Glenfiddich has a bottling hall on site, along with a large bottling plant in Bells Hill. Glenfiddich is a distillery in Scotland's Malt Whisky Trail, a tourism initiative featuring 7 working Speyside distilleries, including Glenfiddich, a historic distillery, and the Speyside Cooperage. Until 2011, Glenfiddich produced a liqueur that was 40% alcohol by volume and sold in 50 cl bottles. Glenfiddich's whiskies have performed well at international spirits ratings competitions. The 12, 15, 18, and 21-year offerings have all rated well in the San Francisco World Spirits Competition and the Beverage Testing Institute's reviews. On balance, the 15-year whiskey has performed the best, receiving 3 double gold medals at the 2007-2010 San Francisco competitions and a score of 91 with the Beverage Testing Institute. Started in 1970, Glenfiddich promoted the Glenfiddich Food and Drink Awards to honor distinguished writing and broadcasting in the fields of food and drink in the UK. In 2008, Glenfiddich decided to discontinue distributing food and drink awards, reviewing their strategy, scope, and potential application in some of Glenfiddich's key markets outside the UK. Started in 1998, Glenfiddich promoted the Glenfiddich Spirit of Scotland Awards. The Glenfiddich Spirit of Scotland Awards were annual awards given to notable Scottish people. Glenfiddich sponsored the event in association with the Scotsman newspaper. 9 awards were distributed for art, business, environment, food, music, screen, sport, writing, and Top Scot. A consulting panel nominated 4 people in each category, with the winner decided by a public vote. The Top Scot is an open award, with the public able to nominate anyone. The awards haven't been hosted since 2014. Glenfiddich was the favorite whiskey of fictional Detective Inspector Morse, as well as his creator Colin Dexter. In the 2004 film Hotel Rwanda, the lead character Paul Rusesabagina, played by Don Cheadle, bribes General Augustin Bizimungu with bottles of Glenfiddich in exchange for favorable treatment by his soldiers. A number of Glenfiddich whiskeys feature in bars on the Yakuza video game series as part of their long-running product placement deal with Suntory.